Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby Schumacher. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this week's Have You Heard, our Animal Health video series. My name is Gabby Schumacher, and I started as an inside sales rep here at Armor March of this year. I grew up in the livestock industry, showing beef, sheep, and swine at the county, state, and national levels. I enjoy spending time with my family, my friends, going camping, and getting out kayaking. Please let us know where you're joining from today in the comments below. This week, we have Dr. John Hutchinson joining us. He is the Director of Cattle Technical Services at Merck Animal Health. He is going to be discussing the convenience, efficacy, and benefit that producers can experience by using Safeguard feed and mineral products in any operation. Dr. John, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Gabby, and thank you for all that have joined the Facebook Live session today. So hopefully we have a good time and you learn something. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas, so down in the Texas Panhandle, where there's not a lot of trees and not a lot of water. I attended Texas A&M University and got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, and then I went to Colorado State University for my PhD. All those degrees were my interest was ruminant nutrition, so cattle nutrition. I have been working at Merck since 1996 in the Cattle Technical Services Group. And, I've been lucky as I've been able to work at Merck Animal Health for this long and see a lot of things change in our industry. But the fun thing is I get to be involved in events like this and things like this and around the country that's exciting and fun to deliver some information to people. And I've been lucky too to be involved in a lot of the research that we do at Merck Animal Health, particularly with Safeguard over the years. So I love fishing. So I know some of you are in Wisconsin and I got to get up there sometime and do some fishing and in all things Texas A&M. So you'll have to pardon my Aggie accent while we're on today.
Fabulous. Well, gig 'em Aggies. I know that's your guys' lingo for Texas A&M.
You bet.
Well, it looks like we've got some people from Plover, Wisconsin, some individuals from California, Southern Indiana, Newton. Oh, we've got some people in Florida, Dr. John. This is going to be a good video. To all of you watching, please feel free to post questions in the comment section below during the discussion. And also don't forget to like and share this post and you will have a chance to win a 25-pound bag of 0.5% Safeguard pellet. And be sure to get in on the 10% rebate that Merck has going on for all Safeguard feed and mineral products until August 31st. So internal parasites can be harmful to your cattle and your bottom line. Research has been conducted by Iowa State University, and it estimates that producers lose up to $190 per animal, primarily from reduced gain and reproductive function when cattle are not dewormed. Deworming can be stressful for all cattle and time-consuming for producers, but luckily there is a solution. Safeguard is the cattleman's choice for easy, effective deworming. No chutes, no corrals, and no trailering required. Safeguard is the only dewormer available in free choice mineral form, pellets, flake meal, cubes, and cake. It takes the guesswork out of deworming, and it's providing a safe and effective option for producers. We all know your time is valuable, so we'll get right to it. So Dr. John, when working with cattle, what do you believe are the true costs of handling?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Gabby. And of course, what you already mentioned about Safeguard, it's the only dewormer here in the United States that we have cattle producers have access to that can put it in the feed, whether it's those blocks or those pellets that you're giving away today or in mixed feed, et cetera. And so there's mineral and blocks and all kinds of different ways to access Safeguard. And what is important about handling. So I can't talk about cattle handling unless I tell a story that I think everybody probably resonates with on this call. Some of you may live this kind of life at times, but I remember growing up around my father and my grandfather and working cattle. And when it comes to working cattle with family, it always gets a little tense sometimes. And so I think of the gates I didn't shut when I was supposed to. And some days I think I'm getting in trouble by somebody for something. And then I remind myself when my grandfather used to yell at me, that cow needs to go out, and I let that cow go in. And so, all the different things that go on when it comes to handling cattle. And I think of the times that I learned lessons of not getting a gate shut. I can promise everybody on this call that a 1,300-pound cow is stronger than me, no matter what age I was and how strong I felt I was. But, so there's those kind of things that go on during handling cattle. And Safeguard is, luckily, if you want to deworm your cattle with Safeguard, you don't have to put up with family members not listening to you or family members getting hurt. So some of the factors associated with handling cattle is, you got to find a crew and get them to work for the day. There's risk of injury of that crew or risk of injury of your family. When usually cattle operations are quite a family affair. So you've got, cousins and uncles and aunts and brothers and sisters and things like that. And so, there's stress on people, there's stress on the cattle herd. They, as they get stressed and they're being handled, there's risk of injury, there's risk of, some pregnancy losses. One other risk that's real common that we see, and not only do we see it and visualize it when we're done working cattle, is how some of the cattle get lame. They either step on something or they just get, foot caught in a gate. You all know all that. You've worked cattle all your lives. You're here listening about that. And so, those are the things that can happen as it relates to handling cattle. And, as you increase their stress, they become more susceptible to disease. There's wear and tear on equipment. And I know, there's only so much money to go around, so we don't want to always be replacing equipment. As our cows have gotten bigger, they're hard on that equipment, just besides themselves and besides other people working them. And so, I had a friend tell me one time that the only good thing that comes from working cattle is the hope that nothing bad happens. So when you kind of think about that, handling cattle is it's a tough time. And get down to the production things, the things that matter to the people that are on this call is it can negatively affect growth. It negatively affects their health, their well-being, their reproduction. So there's a lot of different things. And I know you're probably going to ask me, Gabby, so I'll answer before you do. But, what does it cost to handle cows besides the emotional stress that you have to deal with yourself and your workers and your animals? It's probably a good estimate is $4, maybe $5 a head to handle cattle. So think about that as relates to, how you could save money by getting something extremely important conducted, like deworming your cattle, and not have to have that fee associated with it, just the cost of deworming and pouring it out and walking through your cows and watching them eat that feed. And there they are, they're dewormed.
It's funny when you said it's a family affair and you just pray at the end of working cattle that nothing breaks. I have a lot of family members that pray that too, so I totally understand. So, so what do you believe are the benefits to implementing Safeguard then to your herd? I mean this in a production, reproduction, and health benefit standpoint.
You bet. So you keyed on all three things that we already kind of touched on just a little bit in the handling, how it negatively affects production and reproduction and health. And so everybody needs to remember that there's a few things to remember from today's conversation across the land. Is the number one effect that parasites have on an animal, and in this case, we're talking about cattle, is they create an animal that has a suppressed appetite. So they eat less. And so, I like to use analogies for us humans. And so I think all of you know, if you eat less, you do have a chance to lose weight or not gain as much weight. And so sometimes that's not a good thing in the cattle business if we're selling pounds. And so when you look at production effects in terms of, how we can get rid of the parasites, the first thing we're going to see is an increase in intake. So whether it's grass or whether it's the forage we're providing or the feed we're providing, when we deworm, we get an intake response. We get animals to eat more. If they eat more, I'm not the one that has to tell you this, but I'll remind everybody, because we get caught up in our day-to-day activities and maybe we don't think about the implications of production. But average daily gain, so if we got young stock, heifers, wean calves that we're going to sell, maybe we've bought some yearlings, average daily gain, that weight gain is extremely important. So, they have a daily cost, and the more gain we can put on them, the more revenue we make. Think of dairy cows, milk production. If they don't eat, they don't milk. All right. So, think about reductions in intake and what it does to animals and their body condition score, and how fat they are and what condition they're in. All of you like to see your cows in really good condition, because not only do they look good and are in a good state of production, they're going to breed back. They're going to have better fertility. You're going to get more cows pregnant. You're going to get more calves on the ground. They're going to milk better. They're going to have they're going to pass on better colostrum to their young stock, to their young newborns. And so there's a lot of things related to production and reproduction that kind of all go hand in hand, and it all falls back to, those parasites and their reduction in feed intake. So get rid of those parasites, and that's the production that's going to come. And then production leads to reproduction efficiencies that we see. And then let's talk about health. So the other big thing that parasites do is they disrupt the immune system. So everybody think about that for a minute. Parasites are there to try to survive in that host, the cattle. And at the same time, the animal is trying to get rid of those parasites. And so as it's trying to fight off and defend the parasites, its immune system becomes more susceptible to diseases. So scours or respiratory diseases and things like that. So it's a big deal as it relates to, can I add Safeguard and get those parasites out of those animals? And what are those things that are going to happen? And so, think about weaning rates. And I kind of pulled some data together to think about the northern part of the United States, because I'm guessing a lot of our audience, other than the person in Florida, they are, kind of in that northern plains, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Nebraska, maybe Montana. And so some of that research that we've done over the years in those states, we see anywhere from 20 to 30 pounds of extra weaning weight. So think about that. The cow milks better, the calf gets more milk, the calf is not fighting off the parasites. And so 30 pounds of weight gain from a proper deworming program with the use of Safeguard. Pregnancy rates, what we see on pregnancy rates, we see, 1 calf in 10 cows. So 10% improvement. So, if you can get 1 more calf out of every 10 cows, just think of it out there, everybody, what that means and how you relate to it. Again, it's back to, if they're eating more and they're in better body condition, they're gonna breed back better. They're gonna have better fertility, and they're just gonna look better and be in better condition. And then of course the immunity, parasites are, disrupted of immunity. So think about your young calves trying to get started in life. They're exposed to the outside world. You can build them a better immune system. The cow has a better immune system. Your herd is going to be better protected from those diseases. And so again, strategic deworming with Safeguard and deworming with Safeguard in the feed, it can reduce all those parasites and the cows and the animals that you have on your pastures. You're probably going to ask me, Gabby, right? I mean, you always want to go to the bottom line. So Gabby and I talked yesterday, and so I can talk about all this good stuff and weight gain, but Gabby always asks me, so Dr. John, what is that worth? And so if you think about 30 pounds of extra weight in your calves that you're going to wean, and they're worth $1.50, that's $45 of more revenue. $45 of more revenue, and say it costs $6. That's an 8-to-1 return on your investment. Not very many things we got out there that can return 8-to-1. Then if you hopefully remember what I said about pregnancy rates, they're in better body condition, they're eating more, they have better fertility, 1 calf out of 10 cows. And so that's worth $45. If you just take a 5-weight calf and say they're worth $450, which they're probably worth more than that nowadays, but to be conservative, there's another $45 on reproduction. There's $45 on, weaning weight, And to do a cow-calf pair is probably $8. So, again, you're creeping up to almost 10-to-1 return on investment. And then for those of you all out there that have yearlings and wean calves that you maybe stalker and put out on grass, maybe you're getting ready to weigh them off pasture. We see 35 pounds on them. So, at $6 times 35 pounds, you might get, $50 of revenue. So again, about an 8-to-1 return. So to help you with that, Gabby, you're looking at almost an 8 to 10-to-1 return on investment. So just think about those production effects and what they mean to you and your operation in terms of generating revenue. And then I'd also remind you, we all want to do what's best for our cows. We want them to look good. We want them to be in good condition. And so just think about those things that are, more visual and more ancillary, but they're beneficial when it comes to cattle production.
Well, that sounds, in my opinion, like a no-brainer to add Safeguard to your deworming protocol. To everyone who's watching, please don't forget, if you have any questions, please post them in the comment section below. And also to like and share this post, and you will have a chance to win a 25-pound bag of 0.5% Safeguard pellet. And be sure to get in on the 10% rebate that Merck has going on for all of their Safeguard feed and mineral products till August 31st. So we talked about that, Dr. John, but what kind of timing are we talking about? When honestly is the best time to do this?
Yeah, no, that's good. So how do we implement Safeguard, right? I mean, that's what you're asking. So we talked about all the benefits. We talked about, you don't have to handle cattle, and then we talked about the production benefits and the immunology benefits, and then we talked about the reproduction benefits. So then how do we get it done, right? Well, we're making it easy. We're putting it in the feed, so you can put it out in front of your cows on pasture as long as they have enough, trough space. Or if you're using blocks or anything, there's some management things you have to consider, but, we're making that part easy. So then what about timing? So I'll kind of work from this time of year, and I'll kind of think regionally, kind of the northern plains, and, it's probably starting to get a little cooler. Summer's kind of coming to an end. Unfortunately, here it is almost September, and, fall will be here before we know it. And so again, I'll remind everybody, our ultimate goal is to get rid of the parasites out of the animals. Now, most of the parasites reside on the pasture. So everybody needs to think that if they don't think they have parasites, I promise you do. They're there, they're part of the environment, they're part of pastures, they're part of the ecosystem, if you want to call it that. And so don't be naive enough to think that you don't have parasites on your pastures. And so we want to minimize that burden on those pastures by treating those cows. So let's talk about timing. So we're coming into fall, we're coming into wintertime. What's everybody's biggest cost? It's winter feed, right? Getting those cows from this time when the grass starts getting covered in snow, or it starts going dormant, the nutritive value of that grass gets less and less. And what do we need to do? We need to either supplement those cows along the way. They're an important part of their gestation if they're going to have calves in the spring. And so we've got to get them through the winter. And it's a tough winter, and the environment's cold, maintenance requirements go up. And so you have to get these cows through the winter, and you have to get them through the winter in a really good condition, because when they come out of winter and spring starts, what's going to happen? They're going to give birth. They're going to put an animal on the ground, and you want that animal to have its best start. And for it to have its best start, that cow needs to have good milk, good colostrum, and fortified. And so you can really do some really good preparation on those cows through the winter. So hopefully you get where I'm going with this, Gabby. And so, the timing for any cow operation as it relates to winter feed cost and keeping it at a minimum and making sure the feed you do feed them is efficient is deworm after the first hard freeze. So that's easy to remember, because I can't tell you what the hard freeze is in Wisconsin versus Florida, but I can probably guess it never freezes in Florida for the one person down in Florida on today. But so remember that. So timing. First, after the hard freeze, deworm those cows to get them through. That'll get rid of all the parasites. Those parasites during the winter will not transmit. They will not become infective larvae when they get on the pasture, if there's still some left over. but deworm those cows after the first hard freeze with Safeguard, okay? And then when you come through spring, if you've done that, then you can probably wait in the springtime till about 6 to 8 weeks after the grass greens up. And so grass greens up in different parts of the world at different times. And so if those cows got a good deworming after the hard freeze and you provided them Safeguard, which is really efficacious, then those cows are going to be pretty clean going on to those spring pastures when they start greening up. 6 weeks later, that's about the time those eggs get laid in those pastures. The warmth and the moisture of those pastures, those parasites then start becoming infective larvae and get picked up by the cows. And so that's why that timing is important. It's not just because Dr. John made that date those times up. The parasite life cycle in that cow is about 6 to 8 weeks. So get in there and deworm those cows. And that's usually a good time, depending on when your calves are born, that the calves should get dewormed. So don't forget about those calves. And so you're going to get that deworming in them. I call it almost like a midsummer deworming. And again, that program works when you deworm those cows after your hard freeze, okay? And so if you don't deworm them after that hard freeze, you might have to deworm them right as grass greens up. But I will tell everybody on this call, this is kind of your challenge to your parasite control program. Deworming cows once a year is not appropriate. That'd be what I would tell you. And then those calves can be dewormed depending on how long you have them and kind of the cycle. You know, they're going to need 1 deworming and maybe 2 dewormings as well. So hopefully that helps. If you've got stockers, I know if we move to the summer and you have wean calves, and those of you that kind of raise calves, yearlings, and put them out on grass, you know, you're going to want to deworm them at turnout, and then you're going to want to come back at 28 and 56 days later to try to break that life cycle of those parasites they're picking up on the pasture. So I don't want to forget about the stocker cattle, but wanted to visit with them about them as well. But I hope that helps, Gabby. If you got any other questions, you know, ask me again. But that would be kind of the timing. So that winter deworming after the hard freeze that's coming up in a few months, that is critical for those cows to overwinter, no matter what part of the country you're in.
Well, I totally agree with you. Timing is absolutely crucial when it comes to deworming. So if I think I have a parasite problem in my herd, what is the best way to go about diagnosing my problem?
Yeah, no, good question, which is really nice. You know, there's a lot of things we do as cattle producers and we talk about, and, you know, you can't see, you're right, you can't see IBR, you can't see respiratory disease until it gets to a point where the cattle are, you know, coughing and have a runny nose or, you know, hard breathing. And then now we know that they're sick. And so, but this is something that's really unique to Merck Animal Health. And I know the folks at Armor can help. And so we have a free service for diagnostics for fecal egg counts in the feces. And so it's really easy to get in touch with your Armor Animal Health person. And because it's easy, they can get you in touch with how to go about that free service to actually check your cows, check your calves, check your heifers, check your bulls, check all the different classes of animals that you have on your operation. And there's a diagnostic service we provide free of charge. You collect the fecal samples, and then you send them to a couple of different labs across the country. And there are folks there that, you know, apply some diagnostic test and look at the fecal samples under the microscope, get the eggs kind of separated out, and then count those eggs, and then return to you kind of a report card of your herd. You know, how many parasites you have, how many animals are positive, and then you can kind of do some different math and see what kind of parasite burden you have. So it's extremely important to kind of give yourself a herd check of where you're at. And again, I'm not sure what your excuse would be out there, everybody that's listening, that, you know, there's this free service that can be provided where, you know, all you have to do is pick up some, you know, output from your cows and your calves, right? So pick up the poop and have it tested. So it's extremely important. A couple of other things before you get started, kind of put things in perspective when you think about these, pulling these samples. Again, my challenge to all of you out there is it's free. You know your Armor Health people. I find it interesting, Armor Animal Health. This is a shameless plug for for Armor Animal Health, right, is I read their logo. And so their logo is detect and defend and deliver. So think about that. We have a diagnostics test to detect whether you have parasites or not. Obviously, our defend is we're trying to defend against the parasites. We want to protect our animals. We all care about our animals, so we want to protect them. And then deliver. You can deliver your dewormer, right, in a feed trough and have them dewormed. And so it's pretty easy. So I think that's pretty unique. I'm sure whoever thought of that logo had no idea that I was going to use it as a parasite analogy. But so let's talk a little bit about the fecal egg counts, because my challenge is, and I hope everybody goes ahead and does this, gets in touch with their animal health supplier and finds out how to do these, get a kit. We provide these kits. And so what I would ask you to do is, pull 20 samples from your cows. So if you've got at least 20 cows, if you don't, then pull from all your cows. But you can go out on the pasture. You can pull a fresh patty, and don't send a lot in. We don't need more than a golf ball size, right? We don't need a lot of poop shipping around the United States. So 20 cow samples, 20 calf samples. So from your young stock, they have a different immunity. If you've got heifers, make sure you test your heifers. If you've got some bulls, whether they run with the cows year round or not, you might check your bulls. Any other animals that you may have that are in some class, that pretty much covers it from a cattle perspective. But it'd be really good if you could do your cows, your calves, and your heifers. That would really give you all a good idea of what's going on parasite-wise as it relates to some of the management you've been doing up to this point. And so, that just helps us know what's going on. And then once you know what's going on, I know you know what to do after that. So when you find the parasites, you're going to go to your animal health supplier, in this case, Armor Animal Health, and you're going to get some Safeguard. And most likely you better get it in the feed or the mineral, because that's the easiest way to do it. And so, you want to keep those parasites controlled for all the things we've talked about: immunity, reproduction, and production. And let's put things in perspective as well. I like numbers. Gabby sometimes thinks, man, he uses way too many numbers, but I'm the technical guy. And so think about this. All of you that have cows, you have a cow today that's shedding 30 eggs in, say, a 3-gram sample. We a lot of times test a 3-gram sample. So little bitty, like the end of a tongue depressor scoop of poop, okay? It's about 3 grams. And so that's what we test. And we count the parasite eggs in that 3-gram sample. And let's say those cows have 30 eggs, which is not uncommon, okay? What does that mean? Well, 30 eggs in 3 grams. So that's actually 4,500 eggs in 1 pound of poop. And a cow probably poops 30 pounds a day. That's 135,000 eggs being delivered to your pasture per day. And say you have 50 cows, that's almost 7 million eggs a day in a 50 cow herd on 30 eggs in a 3-gram sample. And so that's what you want to avoid. And that's why you want to do those tests in terms of looking at those. The other thing you can use these diagnostics for, not only for surveillance and to just see where you're at, kind of do a herd check. If you really want to get a little more sophisticated per se, you could actually pull samples the day you deworm and then pull them 14 days later after you've dewormed with Safeguard and see how the results look. I can almost, my experience is when you do that, you will see enormous, greater than 95% reduction in those fecal eggs. And so you actually know your product's working. So what better way to test the product you're feeding is, as long as all those cows got it, you can do a test before, at the time you deworm, and then 14 days after deworming. So a lot of things you can do with the fecal test. Again, it's free. Contact your Armor Animal Health person, and they can help you get in contact with somebody to get you that test.
Sounds good, Dr. John. But let's take a step back. So, I feel like we're talking about beef and a lot of beef producers, but let's talk about producers that are in the dairy industry. How can they implement Safeguard for all ages within their herd?
You bet. So, it's weird doing these because I'll always like working with an interactive audience, and hopefully people are asking questions to make it interactive here in a bit. But so, you know, because I want to ask a question, right? I like asking questions. But so what do you need in a dairy operation to start thinking about deworming? Well, what do you need? Should be pretty simple. You need to make sure those cows are out on pasture. So if your dairy cows are out on pasture, again, I can promise you they are parasitized. They are picking up parasites from those pastures. And so, you know, not going into a lot of detail, but it's relative, you know, it's pretty simple. Those cows that have access to grass and are out there grazing during their lifetime, you're going to want to deworm them at freshening. So the first step, and probably the best place to start, is at freshening. And depending on what time of year it is and what the grass looks like, if the grass is growing and it's green, okay, no matter what part of the country you're in, you know, there might be an opportunity that, you know, 6 to 8 weeks later, as these adult cows are in the milk string, they're out on grass, what's going to happen? They're going to get dewormed at freshening. They're going to go back out there and they're going to start picking up those parasites. And that life cycle for them is going to be about that 6 to 8 weeks as well. And so, you know, you may want to deworm them at 6 to 8 weeks after freshening. And so you all that are dairy producers know what I mean. You know the importance better than I do, that if you can get those cattle cleaned up and they're eating feed. Remember, the number one negative effect of parasites on an animal is a reduction in feed intake. And I know this much about dairies. I'm not from, you know, I didn't grow up in a dairy, so don't get me wrong, but I do know this much: the more they eat, the more they milk. And you want to get them to peak lactation and get that peak as high as you can. So freshening and 6 to 8 weeks later. And then depending on how you manage your cows and when they dry off and when they don't, there may be again, what would be the other time? In the fall after a hard frost, just to clean them up through the winter time. And so not unlike what we've talked about. So freshening, maybe 6 to 8 weeks later, and then for sure after a hard frost to clean them up and get them through the winter, like any animal you're trying to, you know, conserve the feed, make it most efficient in the wintertime.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. John, it looks like we do have a few questions. Mary asks, can this be used on dry cows, and how young can we use this product?
Yeah, so can it be used on dry cows? Absolutely. Absolutely. If they're out there grazing grass and they need to, you know, they're getting closer and closer to giving birth, then they can, you can deworm a dry cow. And young animals, absolutely. There's a reason why we call it Safeguard. It is extremely safe. It is the safest product out there for pregnant cows, for young stock, for other species. It has over greater than 400 times the dose safety margin. So you can be assured that Safeguard's safe for all your animals that we're talking about, Mary. Good question.
Wonderful. Caitlin asks, after using the feed through, what is the time frame you would want to change pastures to prevent uptake of shed parasites that are potentially resistant to the Safeguard? And how long would they stay off the infected pasture?
Yeah, good question. So depending on the age of the animal, you would, you know, the life cycle for a very young animal may be as quick as 3 to 4 weeks. And so when I say life cycle, I'm talking about the parasites. So if you deworm them and they're out there, you know, they're gonna be, you know, stay relatively clean for that 3 or 4 weeks. And as they've picked up those infective larvae, they will start shedding eggs again. So the younger the animals they are, if I've got this right, Caitlin, then you're going to want to move them quicker. The cows have older adult animals have a longer, they have some immunity built up to those parasites. So you're going to, you know, they're not going to have, that life cycle is going to be a little longer. So you could probably keep them out a little longer. I hope that helps, Caitlin. I can't remember the other part of that question as it relates to susceptible parasites to Safeguard and non-susceptible.
Right. She asked, what is the time frame you would want to change pastures to prevent uptake of shed parasites that are potentially resistant to Safeguard?
Right. So, you know, back to the same, you know, 3 to 4 weeks on a younger animal and maybe 6 to 8 weeks on an older animal. But you're going to have those parasites. I mean, just to be clear, Caitlin, as those pastures, you try to move them. It's endemic. So those parasites are out there. You're just trying to keep, the burden at a low level. And that's a good point. And that's back to the fecal diagnostics to see if there is some, resistant population building up. You can always test the efficacy of your different dewormers and see which one's working the best and how you're keeping that parasite burden down. Because the less that you can keep the cattle from shedding on those pastures, the better opportunity you have for keeping the burdens low and having those cows not recontaminate those pastures. Good question, Caitlin.
Right, I thought so too. Russ asks, Dr. John, you mentioned when to worm your cows that calve in the spring. Is that the same for fall calvers?
Yeah. So again, what I would do when you talk about fall calvers, and so the seasons are just different, right? So most likely, depending on your forage. So I don't know where you're located and what your forage is like, but let the forage decide how you're going to deworm. So when you fall calve, I assume that you have a lot of fall green grass, or you're further down south maybe, and you have some type of grass. And so if you do, then just think about the same thing as those calves get old. Those cows, are grazing grass, and it's green, lush grass, and probably the temperature's above 40 or 50 degrees, then you're going to have parasite transmission. So again, you're going to deworm those, 6 to 8 weeks on the cow, and the calf, you're going to deworm as well in that same situation. So hopefully that makes sense. I mean, just kind of, when I say deworm them when the grass greens up, well, in the fall, deworm them when, they've got some parasite transmission going on, and then 6 to 8 weeks later, you can deworm them again along with the calves. Hopefully that makes sense.
Right. Well, Russ's question was the last one we had. Is there anything else you would like to add, Dr. John?
You bet. I mean, maybe to leave everybody, and thanks everybody for the questions. So actually they were pretty tough questions. So good job by the audience. And so, I just follow up with this. I think everybody on the call that's on here and got on here, I thank you very much for getting on the call and, listening to this guy from Texas talk about parasites, because hopefully you can tell I really enjoy talking about parasites. So hopefully my enthusiasm goes over to your enthusiasm about checking your cows, checking your calves, thinking about pastures, thinking about those fall calvers and spring calvers, and kind of getting some ideas about how parasites are transmitted in these pastures due to weather and warmth and moisture. And you think about how you deworm, and you think about more than just one time a year deworming in your herd. And so hopefully that my enthusiasm for parasites relays to that. And then last thing I'll leave you with is, I think we all would agree parasites are bad. They're called a parasite, right? They cause a lot of damage to the gut. That's what they do. So that's their purpose in life, is to damage the gut and suck blood and live off their host. And so when the parasites are bad, and we know that, and they interfere with nutrition, they interfere with absorption of nutrients, they interfere with the immune system, they interfere with feed intake, all those things don't go well for cattle production. And so I think if you remind yourself of that, think about Safeguard and how easy you don't have an excuse for, well, I don't want to work my cows, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. That excuse is taken away. So I just leave you with that. Parasites are bad. Hopefully you have some renewed enthusiasm for parasites. There's a free fecal diagnostic service that's provided by Merck. And so we're providing you a lot of tools and a lot of opportunities to kind of up your game on your parasite control programs, on your operations. So look forward to all of you doing that. And again, thanks to Armor Animal Health, and thanks for all of you being on this call.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, Dr. John. And for all of you watching, we hope you enjoyed today's live video and learned something new. If you found it useful, please share it with your friends. As a reminder, this video has been recorded, so you will be able to go back and view it again on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. If you're watching the recorded version of this video, please feel free to ask questions in the comments and we will work to answer those questions as well. After this live video, we will post a survey in the comments below, so let us know how we can serve you and what topics you'd like to hear about in the future. Next week on Have You Heard, Alyssa, another one of our inside sales reps, will be discussing reproduction with our very own Dr. Jim Heyer. We will see you next Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Time on Have You Heard.